and Jerry Shirk was on the phone with you, and I happened to go into his office because I needed something, and he said, "Oh, I'm on the phone with the Met." And I was like, "Oh, tell him he should hire me." And so Jerry did. And so I set up an interview with David. I was home at Christmas because I grew up in New Jersey. And I came in, it was one of those bitter cold days, and I had like a whole change of clothes in the bathroom because, you know, you're like sweating on the subway. And I walked into the Met, and I come up, and David talks to me for a few minutes, and he's like, "Well, let me take you on a tour of the building." So that was my first tour of the Met, and I believe we started at the top, because the thing I remember, well, your office was up on the 6th floor, and you took me to look through the chandelier, and that's something I've never forgotten. And then we started going down, and we got into the scenic shop, and Johnny Sellers saw me and came running over and gave me a big hug, because we went to college together and hadn't seen him since then. Some of you know John Sellers, our assistant general manager. And then we went into the prop shop where another college friend of mine was working, and came over and gave me a hug. And David looked at me and was like, "Well, I guess I have to hire you because you know everybody." And so he did. So I came to work on Meistersinger. It was my first show at the Met as the 4th assistant director.
Well, I would say 3rd.
Well, technically I was the 4th, but I ended up
I think Danny Shea was the 4th.
Yeah. So it was me and Peter and Paul Mills and Danny Shea. And we worked our way through that massive show, and it went really well. I think I was only here through opening. And then like a few weeks later, I was out in California working, and David called to offer me some shows for next season, like a new production, a whole bunch of stuff. And I had the opportunity to go to Hong Kong to work with Stephen Lawless, and I'd always really wanted to travel overseas. So I said, "Well, you know, I can't really do that because I'm going to be out of the country." And I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I remember being terrified and really upset when we hung up the phone. And I was like, "Oh my God!" And I think I was working with you.
I was just going to say, I think you were in the living room of Orange County.
Yes, I was. Because I was like, "Terry, oh my God, I don't know what just happened. I thought he liked me." So I like had a glass of wine, I think, and then I called Peter.
Even back then?
Even back then. Yeah, I was, you know. And I called Peter, who was at the office, and I was like, "Oh my God, I just have this crazy girl. I think David hates me." And he was like, "Okay." He just talked to me because you know, David knew that we had worked together in San Francisco. So Peter was like, "You know, he thinks you're really good, and he wants you to come back, and he gets, you know, a little upset when people don't want to come back." And so of course, as those things happened, the show in Hong Kong fell through. And so like 3 weeks later, when of course then I'm looking at next season with no work, I waited until, no, David wasn't doing Pilates at the time, but I knew he went to the gym every day like at 4:30. So I waited till 5 when I knew I'd get his voicemail. And I called, and I was like, "Hi, it's Paula. Yeah, it's I kind of fell through, and you know, if you have anything, I know you probably don't, but please call me back." And so he did. I was on the Pinnell Figaro with Leslie. And ever since then, David took me to Japan to work. He was like, "Well, I know you want to go travel, so why don't you work for me?" And we had an amazing history of working many times in Japan. And then I kind of took some time off from the opera world to have children, and I was kind of burnt out. And as you were saying about loyalty, in 2013, when I was like, "Oh, I really probably should just do some more opera. I can't see myself in the gym for the rest of my life." And I called Dave, and he was like, "What do you want to get back into opera for?" "Yeah, I got something for you." And like within 24 hours, back to the Met on the Meistersinger.
Full circle.
Full circle, and never really expecting that I would be here full time ever. But David's always been very loyal to me, and I think caring about people who he recognizes are good at their jobs, and he wants to have decent people around him, and so here we are. So thank you.
Wow.